welcome to our Year 4 overview video for Autumn 2. This is what you're going to be learning in English and Maths in the half term up until Christmas.
Okay, so we're going to start off with, we're looking at fronted adverbials. Fronted adverbials are adverbs that become at the beginning of a sentence. The key here with adverbs is to always make sure they are followed by a comma. We're also going to be looking at figurative language. So that's that kind of persuasive language that we touched on last term. And we're going to be looking at writing poems in the form of a shape. We're also going to be designing leaflets and we're going to be doing recounts of an event. So, storytelling then. When we're writing a story, we're going to look at structure. So we're going to give it a beginning, a middle and an end. We're going to look at the narratives that we use. We're looking at writing with adjectives, verbs, adverbs, time words, similes, metaphors, all the things we've briefly brushed over so far in Autumn Term 1. We're also going to be looking at using direct speech. That's with your 66 and your 99s. That will how you like to what you like to call them. We're going to be looking at characters' feelings within that story. We're going to try and portray how a character feels when we're doing our story writing. And we're going to remember to consider the audience and building up the tension, the excitement. We're going to look at changing sentences. So again, these are your fronted adverbials, which we're going to start using in our everyday writing. An example of a shape poem. We write poems and when we put them into the different shape of what we are talking about. Sounds easy, but it is not. And the figurative language, so we're going to be looking at metaphors, we're going to be looking at onomatopoeia and similes, we're going to be looking at personification, alliteration and hyperbole. This would be terminology that our children become very familiar with next half term. When we're looking at writing our persuasive language, we're going to be looking at slogans, we're going to be producing leaflets and looking at the slogans and those kind of headings we would give them in order to catch those, that reader's attention. And we're going to be writing recounts. So with a recount, we're going to be looking at things like why we're telling the recount, what happened, and the sequence. So we're looking at chronological order, we're looking at what tense we're going to be writing in. And again, an example of how that explanation text, we've looked at this really closely this first half term, but we're going to be looking at writing an introduction with the 5 W's, who, what, where, when and why. We're going to be looking at carrying on writing in paragraphs with subheadings. And we're going to be writing top tips and looking again at that kind of language that we use and looking at the audience we're writing for. Okay, so in maths.
On to maths then. So this half term in maths we're going to start by continuing our work on addition and subtraction. It's a topic that we've already started in Autumn 1, so we'll just carry that on. The first thing we'll do is look at subtraction with exchanging. So before half term we've looked at some simple 4-digit subtraction where there's no exchanging. It is a smaller number on the bottom and can be subtracted really easily. We'll move on after half term to look at those exchanging. So that's where the digit at the bottom is larger than the digit on the top. And the way that we're going to do that and make sure that our children have got the right concept of this is by looking at that concept of exchanging. So we've got 5 take away 3, which is 2. But then we will say we've got 2 tens and we need to subtract 7 tens. As we don't have 7 tens to subtract, we are going to say that we need to exchange 100. We need to make these hundreds look different. So we leave our 300s there and we move 100 into our tens column in order to give us then 12 tens. We can then do our subtraction, so we're left with 5 tens there. And then the same here. We understand that we've now got 300s, so we exchange one of our thousands to leave 6 thousands there. And then we can carry on with our subtraction. As well as that, we'll be then putting some word problems into the mix, so putting those additional subtraction skills into practice. Before moving on to estimating and using inverse to check answers to calculation. So once our griffins are competent at doing that addition and subtraction, including exchange and regrouping, we'll be looking at using those inverse operations. If a question uses addition, we need to use subtraction to check it, and vice versa. Like I just said, we'll be moving on to doing some word problems, some two-step problems. So looking at the language of addition and subtraction and just making sure that we are really familiar with all of the language that is there and making sure that we can use that in context to get the answers. Picking out those main bits that we need in questions in order to answer it. After our addition and subtraction topic, we'll be moving on to multiplication and division. We won't be doing any formal multiplication and division at this point, but we'll start with multiplying and dividing by 10 and 100, using our previous knowledge of place value to move our digits to the right or left, depending on if we are dividing or multiplying. We will look at multiplying by 1 and 0 and the rules that coincide with that. And then looking at the 6, 7 and 9 times table and division facts. That will take us all up until Christmas, and that is your maths learning for the next half term.